Hello, everyone. My name is Keegan Burke. My pronouns are he, him, and I am a training and capacity building coordinator at the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I'd like to welcome you to NYSCDV's 2022 Legislative Day of Action. I'm just going to go over a couple of housekeeping items as we get started today. To pose your questions or comments during today's session, please use the chat box. We are recording this webinar, and a link to the recording, as well as any materials mentioned, will be made available. We are providing live captioning for today's webinar. To turn on your caption, you can click on the CC button in your toolbar, and the caption will appear in the presentation window. And with that, I would like to introduce Connie Neal, Executive Director of NYSCDV.
Thank you, Keegan, and good morning, everyone. I'm Connie Neal, Executive Director of the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and I'm so glad that you've joined us today for our annual Legislative Day of Action. At the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, we work to create and support the social change necessary to prevent and confront domestic violence. We do this work through coalition building, advocacy, and policy efforts. And on this day of action, all of those elements are woven together as we have survivors, advocates, allies, and elected officials from across the state joining in this morning program, participating in legislative meetings, and posting on social media throughout the day. And today is a day that all of us can take actions that will change the future of domestic violence advocacy services in the state. Across New York, the needs of survivors are significant and are often complicated. And domestic violence advocacy programs do incredibly difficult work supporting survivors while facing multiple system challenges and limited resources themselves. In the next few minutes, we will be hearing from a great group of survivors, advocates, legislative leaders, and government representatives. For when we understand and address the gaps that exist for survivors, legislation can remove barriers to independence that may feel unsurmountable for far too many survivors. There is much work to be done to implement needed system change and reform to be where we are at a place where services are really survivor-centered, but with our collective actions, the future will be very bright in our state. Now, next up, I'm excited to introduce a very special guest. Governor Kathy Hochul began her career in public service on her local town board before serving as the Erie County Clerk, and then as a member of Congress for New York's 26th Congressional District. She more recently served in statewide office as Lieutenant Governor and now as the first woman to serve as Governor of the state of New York. Governor Hochul has a long history of being a champion for women and families. Some of the issues she has worked on include paid family leave, the gender wage gap, access to affordable health care, childcare, and workplace discrimination, among many other initiatives. In 2006, she joined her mother and aunt in establishing the Kathleen Mary House, a transitional home for victims of domestic violence. A few years ago in 2019, the then Lieutenant Governor joined us for our Legislative Day of Action, and we are so excited that she is joining us again today as our governor. So please join me in welcoming the 57th Governor of the state of New York, Governor Kathy Hochul.
Well, first of all, thank you, Connie, for the invitation to participate again in your annual Day of Advocacy. Zoom is fine, but it was so much better to be in person. I look forward to being back with you once again, hopefully next year, because the energy we derive from each other in our common purpose to eradicate violence against all individuals, but particularly domestic-based violence, is an important calling for all of us. And I really put it in those terms because it is hard work. It is hard to be someone who deals with survivors day in and day out, as many of your members do. There's a lot of pain. There's a sense of betrayal because often this is someone, if it had been in the context of a marriage relationship, there should be that trust and ability to rely on each other for support. And when that's betrayed and the environment turns either verbally or physically abusive, it really shakes a human being to their core, and they need extra help to help them recover. And also the impact on children. What happens to a child who grows up in an environment where there should be love and unconditional love among the parents, and they see that broken down. So we know domestic violence occurs in all shapes and forms, different relationships, but it is really hard to be in this space. And I want to thank all of you advocates who've stepped forward to be the voices and the champions for the people who have to endure the unspeakable. And we have seen something that I call just an absolute travesty I don't think at the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020 that we could have foreseen the long-term impact that the isolation, the disconnect, the forced time people had to spend together without having a break really did result in an extraordinarily high number of cases to our hotline. And case of domestic violence, our calls are up over 34% over the previous year. And those are all cries for help. Those are people who are in an environment where they just know they can't sustain it any longer. So I thank all of you for being part of the system of help and recovery and support. And I'll continue supporting these efforts because this has been a lifelong journey for my family. Back when I was a college student at Syracuse University, my mother also decided to go back to college and become a social worker. And her first internships and her early work in her career were to help victims of domestic violence, except back then they were called victims of wife beatings. That was the narrative back in the late 70s. And she became a champion. I remember hearing her on countless phone calls as she took calls from clients and tried to build up self-confidence in women and to help them have that independence, often to leave a relationship that they felt trapped in and to take their children with them. Which is why later in life, my mother was, at the time, my mother was one of the co-founders of the Erie County Commission on Domestic Violence and was a true champion to help establish a place called Haven House. But later, for my mother's 70th birthday, she decided that she wanted to not have a party, but she literally wanted to have a family effort to open a home for victims of domestic violence, a transitional home where people could go for more than just a couple of days, but literally spend 6 months or a year and get the children there as well, get them in a new school, get them into a nurturing, loving environment, and teach them about how to have life skills that they did not have before. So this was an important part of my life's calling as well, to focus with my mother and my aunt to create this environment. And it was named after, Kathleen Mary House. I'm named Kathleen Mary, but that's after my mother's mother, who also had to endure emotional abuse from an individual who did end up walking out. Her husband walked out on my mother when she was just a child. So that's a phenomenon that permeates many families. Many times you would not expect it goes on, or even in dating relationships or partner relationships, but it's real, it's there, and it's only gotten worse. So I'm going to continue now as governor to be in a position to really do something about it. And that means also supporting programs like the $90 million we just put in our budget for domestic violence and sexual assault violence protection programs, as well as making sure that we fully support our Office of Victim Services, another $14 million for that as well. And we are the only state in the nation that has a cabinet level agency that deals with gender-based violence. And that is another statement of our values, a statement of our priorities to help people recover. So I just wanted to lend my voice to all of those who extend our gratitude as representatives of this state, our other elected officials you'll be hearing from today, all believe in what you're doing. And I hope someday in the future that people will realize that, every life is special. Every person has deserves the dignity to be able to live in an environment that is nurturing and loving, and that this violence will soon be a thing of the past. But until then, we need your voices. We need your advocacy. We need your love. We need your caring for these individuals in their time of great need. So I just want to thank you, Connie, and Kelly Owens, and everyone else who's been working so hard in these areas. And I thank my Dynamite team for the passion they bring to this cause as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Governor. And we truly appreciate having this time with you this morning. Really appreciate all your support and your long-term commitment to working to end domestic violence in New York. And
thank you.
With much appreciation. Hope you have a great day ahead of you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
All right. So next up, I have a great pleasure of introducing the chair of the Board of Directors of the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, Kelly Coyne. Kelly has over 19 years of experience working to end domestic violence, including working with survivors and their children in a domestic violence shelter. Kelly joined Safe Horizon in 2013 and became Deputy Chief Program Officer in 2019. She currently leads program operations and ensures that services integrate a trauma-informed, client-centered, and anti-oppressive lens while spearheading quality assurance and improvement efforts. Kelly, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks so much for being here. It's lovely to see so many squares across the state today. I share the governor's sentiments. I miss being there in Albany together. I'm really pleased to welcome all of you to the virtual Legislative Advocacy Day on behalf of the Niskitiv Board of Directors. Our board is made up of member programs from across New York State and allied professionals from a variety of sectors and industries. First, I want to say a huge thank you to the governor for her leadership in helping to restore the critical vocal funds for providers. These funds are critical in helping to serve the survivors and families across of our great state. We're really appreciative of your continued partnership and looking forward to continue to working with you to help end domestic violence in New York State. To our elected officials, government partners, state agencies, and others in the room, there's much work to be done, and we look forward to working with each of you to ensure that all survivors are safe and thriving in our great state. None of us can do this in a vacuum, and none of us can do this alone. We must work together to meet the needs of survivors. And to the advocates, allies, and survivors in the world, we're in the room, thank you. Thank you for your tireless work to elevate the needs and the wants of our survivors. Your work over the last couple of years has not gone unnoticed, and we know that you're tired. But today is a day for restoration and for energy. Enjoy today. Today is a day that we get to do what we do best. We're advocates, and the best thing that we do is tell the stories of our clients and advocate for the needs and the rights of the survivors across our state. So we look forward to working with you all today. We look forward to a great day of partnership and conversation. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Joan.
Thank you, Kelly, and for all the work you do as Niskitiv Board Chair. I am Joan Gerhardt, Director of Public Policy and Advocacy at the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and I too want to welcome all of you. I'm so excited to share the screen with everyone today. Certainly virtual events aren't quite the same as being in person together, sharing in that community, the energy and excitement. Of course, we love seeing our colleagues from around the state to network and share in best practice. And we're certainly hoping that we can all be together back at the Legislative Office Building in 2023. But Day of Action brings with it an even larger goal, an important one, to elevate the voices of domestic violence survivors to our representatives in Albany, to bring their issues to the fore, to educate legislators about the challenges they face each and every day, and to impress upon legislators the critical role they have in our work. Together, we share the same goals: to safeguard supportive services for all survivors, and to ensure programs have the funding and flexibility to support them. Legislators can advance budgetary initiatives that improve the lives of domestic violence survivors, and they can introduce, co-sponsor, or support legislation that is equitable, informed by survivors' voices, and focused on harm reduction. Think about how important their work was to us and to domestic violence survivors this year alone. Largely because of our advocacy and the work of other victim services and legal services providers, the legislature and governor heard our urgent call for the state to cover the Victims of Crime Act federal funding shortfall. The final budget approved just 2 weeks ago included an additional $14.4 million for the Office of Victim Services to maintain VOCA funding levels for victim service providers. And the governor's financial plan, which forecasts future spending, allocated an additional $28.8 million for victim services in the 2023 and 2024 state budgets. That was an enormously positive development, and it took us as advocates and them as elected officials to make it happen. Now on Legislative Day of Action, we're asking for their assistance again, but this time we're asking them to stand up for specific legislation we have identified that will improve the lives of domestic violence survivors and their family members. Some of these bills should be familiar to them, such as the Comprehensive Sex Education Bill or Assemblymember Weinstein's bill to ensure litigants in family court receive copies of forensic child custody evaluation reports. Others are new bills that they might not be familiar with, such as the Fair Access to Victim Compensation Bill. Regardless of whether they are old or new, we'll be asking legislators to consider co-sponsoring these priorities and voting for them either in committee or when they reach the floor of each chamber. We also expect to raise concerns with legislators related to the pandemic as it continues into its third year, the higher demand for domestic violence services, and those requests being more complicated and involving more lethality than before. And one of the most significant and lingering impacts on the provision of services to domestic violence survivors during the pandemic continues to be the difficulty in retaining and recruiting staff. The country is experiencing the Great Resignation, and not-for-profits like domestic violence service providers are not immune. That being said, because funding levels for domestic violence services have been stagnant for many years, we are unable to pay staff a decent wage. Many advocates can make more money working at a Starbucks than working in a domestic violence shelter, and it's a much less traumatic, stressful job to boot. These are the issues we need legislators to know and understand, because these are the issues that make it extremely challenging to support domestic violence survivors and their families the way they need to be supported. Which brings me back to where I began and how critical it is for us to partner with legislators to ensure the needs of survivors are met. So before I start my introduction of our next speaker, I want to make sure she is here with us. Is Senator Krueger here?
Joan, I don't believe we have her just yet. If you want, we can move to the Attorney General's video while we wait.
That would be fine.
All right. We will pull up that video in a second.
Okay, and I will go ahead and introduce the Attorney General, Tish James, who is the 67th Attorney General for the state of New York. She is an experienced attorney and public servant with a long record of accomplishments. She is the first woman of color to hold statewide office in New York and the first woman to be elected Attorney General. As head of the Department of Law, Attorney General James is both the people's lawyer and the state's chief legal officer. As the people's lawyer, she serves as the guardian of the legal rights of the citizens of New York, its organizations, and its natural resources. In fulfilling the duties of the state's chief legal counsel, she not only advises the executive branch of state government, but also defends actions and proceedings on behalf of the state. AG James serves all New Yorkers in numerous matters affecting their daily lives. Her office is charged with the statutory and common law powers to protect consumers and investors, charitable donors, the public health and environment, civil rights, and the rights of wage earners and businesses across the state. Attorney General James provided us with a pre-recorded message, which we will play for you now.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to join you for this important day of action. Domestic violence is an issue that affects people of all cultures, socioeconomic backgrounds, and genders. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men has experienced some form of physical violence from an intimate partner in their lifetime. This crisis was amplified by the stay-at-home order of the COVID-19 pandemic. And organizations like this one worked tirelessly to answer the call. I'm grateful for your hard work and dedication to providing resources for survivors and helping them move forward in their lives. Education and training about domestic violence are critical to increasing awareness, providing support to survivors, and fostering healthy, nonviolent relationships. As Attorney General, I'm committed to fighting all forms of violence and abuse, from intimate partner violence to sexual exploitation. I'm proud to stand with you today and every day in support of survivors. Thank you.
Thank you to the Attorney General for providing those remarks. I'd like to give everyone a summary of the legislation that we're going to be advocating for today, if you haven't had a chance to review our preparatory materials. So here's a quick rundown of those bills. Top of the list is a bill to ensure litigants in family court have access to their forensic child custody evaluation reports. As the Blue Ribbon Commission on Forensic Evaluations concluded, the forensic evaluation process is fraught with bias, inequity, and a statewide lack of standards, and allows for discrimination and violations of due process. That's why litigants' review of these reports is so crucial. This bill would permit litigants, their attorneys, the attorney for the child, and anyone retained by counsel to obtain a copy of not only the forensic evaluation report, but the evaluator's supporting file as well. Any disclosure of information in the reports would be contempt of court, punishable by fine, imprisonment, or both. Second, we're prioritizing the Comprehensive Sex Ed Healthy Relationships Bill. Comprehensive sex ed teaches students about bodily autonomy, personal boundaries, privacy, and how to tell the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationships. It instills in students of all ages empathy and respect for each other, and lets students know how and where to get help if they're being abused and harassed. This curriculum will be age appropriate for students in grades K through 12, and parents will be able to opt their children out of the curriculum if preferred. I understand that Senator Krueger has joined us, so I'm going to leave the summary of the remaining bills to a later time and go ahead and begin my introduction. Senator Krueger has represented District 28 on the east side of Manhattan for more than 20 years. She is chair of the Senate's Finance Committee, and in that role works closely with NISCATIV and domestic violence advocates on budgetary issues affecting our work. She is a fierce advocate for social services. This year, Senator Krueger is sponsoring a bill to prevent abusers from using technology to harass their victims. The bill would expand the definition of the offense of aggravated harassment in the second degree to include contacts via text, private message, email, or other communication. It has already passed the Senate this year, and we're hoping to get it approved in the Assembly. Senator Krueger, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to be with you today. And I hope everybody can hear me. I'm in my office in Albany. This is obviously continuing to be a very busy session for us. We have, I think, just 19 days left in session and an enormous legislative agenda. So we're very glad that you are educating us about the importance of the issues that you work on and legislation that you need to accomplish your goals, or actually all our goals, because we are all better off when we're living in a society where there is far, far less domestic violence. There are far, far fewer children growing up exposed to these situations and being victims as well. And that we have a lot of work to do because unfortunately, there seems to be a growth in violence in American society and almost a normalizing and acceptance of a certain level of anger and violence that I have to say, I don't think I lived through in the earlier parts of my life. So we need your expertise to help us understand what is going on. Why does it appear that our society is heading the wrong direction? What we can do to reverse that, and then what we can do to make sure that people who unfortunately have been survivors of DV or living with it now have the best possible options and outcomes for themselves. Because looking the other way and pretending it's not going on in every community, it's fascinating to me that when I hear people think, oh, that doesn't happen in my district, or no, I have higher income people. That doesn't happen in higher income families. Well, of course, you all know it can happen and does happen everywhere. Race, religion, gender, socioeconomic status. There are unfortunately so many different triggers for this behavior. So I really wish you an incredibly successful day in both expanding your own education and agenda, and then educating us in the legislature about what we need to do to help you do your job. So thank you for giving me a few minutes today.
Thank you. We know it is a very busy day just coming back from break. So thank you so much, Senator. And I just wanted to thank you personally as well for your work in this year's budget to get that additional funding for the Office of Victim Services for the VOCA shortfall. We know you were instrumental in those negotiations, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, we are waiting for Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal to join us as well. She is our next speaker. So I will go ahead and continue talking about the bills that we're going to be advocating for today. One of the bills is a new bill. It's called the Fair Access to Victim Compensation Bill, and it's aimed at removing the barriers victims face in receiving victim compensation for hospital bills, temporary housing, safety measures like lock replacements, and the like. Specifically, the bill would clarify that a victim is eligible for compensation regardless of whether a suspect has been arrested, charged, apprehended, or prosecuted, or whether the victim interacted with the law enforcement agency investigating the crime. It would extend the time frame for filing claims from 1 year to 7, which is a very big change, and it would expand the types of documentation a victim can provide with a claim, including the ability for them to self-attest to their victimization. So we've now covered 3 of the 6 bills that we will be advocating for today. And I see that Assemblymember Rosenthal has joined us. So I would like to introduce her. So I'm just going to my notes. Please give me one moment. Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal represents the 67th Assembly District in Manhattan. She was elected to the Assembly in 2006 after serving 13 years as district director for Congressman Jerry Nadler. Assemblymember Rosenthal has passed more than 70 laws that have helped to improve the lives of all New York State residents. Just last year alone, these were some of the bills she introduced that were signed into law. A bill to allow phone or virtual interviews for public assistance applications, a bill to criminalize the sale of ghost guns and require registration for self-assembled firearms, a bill to require veterinarians to report suspected animal cruelty, a bill to provide free feminine hygiene products in shelter, and a bill to provide pregnant incarcerated women with needed supports, a new law that we advocated for last year. And as the chair of the Assembly Social Services Committee, she has introduced numerous pieces of legislation to improve the lives of domestic violence survivors and their families. She is the lead sponsor of 2 of the bills we are advocating for today. A bill to permit domestic violence survivors to self-attest to their status to break phone and utility contracts, and the Adult Survivors Act. She is also engaged in discussions on the way New York State funds domestic violence services and has introduced a bill to eliminate the current yet antiquated per diem reimbursement model. Assemblymember Rosenthal, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. Was that me you were talking about? It's funny to hear about yourself. But anyway, thank you so much, Joan. For those who don't know, I represent the 67th Assembly District in Manhattan, which includes the Upper West Side, parts of Hell's Kitchen. I'm chair of the Committee on Social Services, so I've had the pleasure of working with Ms. Gitiv and so many of the other tremendous advocates who work to reduce domestic violence statewide and support survivors. I was first elected in 2006, and I have attempted to bring to the fore the issues that surround domestic violence and to spread awareness of this issue that permeates all levels of society. In 2009, I learned of an issue that many women experience in attempting to obtain social service benefits, which could include rental assistance, cash assistance, SNAP, among other things. And in order to be approved and begin receiving these benefits, women were told they needed to produce financial documents from their spouse or partner, even in circumstances when their spouse was the abuser and they had an order of protection against them. And so, we fixed that in law, and I passed a law to prohibit social service districts from requiring an applicant who is a survivor of DV to contact their abuser. A few years ago, I read a story about the importance that hairstylists, barbers, and cosmetologists can play in recognizing signs of domestic violence and how they could help a client seek help if the client spoke to them about it. And, many people develop a special relationship with their barber or hairdresser or stylist and feel comfortable disclosing things that they might not tell a close friend or someone who they think would judge them, would tell. They wouldn't feel safe telling. And so I passed a law working with Niskative to require that hairstylists and barbers and cosmetologists be trained in recognizing signs of DV and sexual assault and being able to direct them to organizations like Niskative to give them help. We know that DV is a growing problem, and unfortunately, New York State has among the highest demand for services. On one day in 2020 alone, more than 4,000 victims were housed in an emergency shelter or transitional housing provided by DV programs, with another 4,000 adults and children receiving non-residential services. We have continually failed to provide adequate funding to our DV providers to guarantee that they can accommodate all the requests. Last year, I met with Niskative about the need for greater funding for DV services, particularly for non-residential services, which have been increasing in demand in recent years. Services like toll-free hotlines, workforce skills development, childcare support, language assistance, and counseling continue to be needed. Yet at the time, our state's funding for these services had not been increased since it was added to the budget 20 years ago. As chair of the Committee on Social Services, I was proud to advocate for greater funding for non-residential services in the budget and was able to secure the first increase in 20 years. But that funding remained in our enacted budget. I will continue to push for increases to follow until all the advocates and groups receive exactly what they need. I was also proud to fight with Niskative in a Have I been muted this whole time?
No, just that last phrase or two. Please
okay.
continue.
I'm sorry, I just got that message. I was proud to fight with Niskative and a coalition of more than 100 other organizations to secure funding for Victim Services Organization. After funding was cut to organizations that receive federal funding under VOCA, Victims of Crime Act, so many organizations that provide critical life-saving support feared what would happen next. The New York State Office of Victim Services had warned them to expect a reduction in funding for their future contracts, which meant for organizations that operate on such tight margins, laying off staff, scaling back services, or having to close altogether. I led the efforts in the legislature to demand greater funding for these organizations and was pleased that our advocacy led to some of this money being restored. So we will have a fight next year or in the year after, but right now the funding is secure for everyone to operate going forward. We still have 6 weeks left of session, and so there's a lot to do, and I'm excited to work with Niskative on the Adult Survivors Act, which would allow for a 1-year look back for people who were sexually abused as adults to bring cases against their abuser, even if the statute of limitation has run out. I sponsored the Child Victims Act, which we passed in 2019, and which led to 10,000 adults who were abused as children bringing cases forward for people who were 18 and over, with short statutes of limitations and no wherewithal to bring a case. They need to be able to have a path to justice as well. And so, you know, we've heard of the Jeffrey Epsteins, Harvey Weinsteins, the pediatricians, the gynecologist in Manhattan who abused his patients, 200 of them. These women do not have the opportunity right now to go to court and sue them and the institutions that harbored them. And it is only fair that we allow people this one-year look back. So we're working very hard to get this passed this year. I'm also working to pass my legislation allowing survivors of DV to escape phone, internet, utility contracts with a self-attestation form. You know, working together with all of you is so meaningful to me because I see the dedication, I see the selflessness. You expose yourselves to painful stories, yet you persevere because you're so important in helping people regain control of their lives. And, you know, it's my honor to work alongside you. And I thank you all for all your work and look forward to continuing our successes in the future.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Rosenthal. You can just hear how committed you are to the issues that domestic violence survivors and their families face, and we couldn't have a better ally. And I understand the Adult Survivors Act might be on the Senate active list today, so we might have movement there, at least in that chamber. So
absolutely. And working hard in the Assembly to get that done as well, but the Senate should be passing it today.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much.
Well, now we're going to turn to a panel of survivor advocates that has been pre-recorded. It does start with a thank you for Attorney General James. So we did move around our agenda a little bit, so excuse us for that. But it's a wonderful panel and we'll join back together afterwards.
Thank you, New York State Attorney General Tish James, for your continued support of survivors of domestic violence. Good morning, and thank you all for attending NYSCDF's 2022 Virtual Legislative Day of Action. My name is Brittany Galati, and I'm the Public Policy Coordinator with NYSCDF. Survivor voices must be centered in policy work to end domestic violence. This is especially true when it comes to systems change work, ensuring policies are survivor-centered, trauma-informed, and address unintended consequences that may be more visible to folks with lived experience. It is crucial that policy work uplifts both big picture systemic issues, while also identifying minor changes that are deeply impactful for survivors and their families. Survivors are innately attuned to gaps in service, barriers to service, and other access issues. Folks who have been impacted by domestic violence are powerful storytellers, social change agents, and policy advocates within the movement. Weaving survivor advocacy into policy work ensures authenticity and accountability. Today, we are starting a conversation with survivor advocates who are changing the policy landscape, creating a more equitable experience for all survivors. I am thrilled to be joined today by Geena Cruz, Kim Dadou-Brown, and Jacqueline Franchetti for today's panel. Thank you all for joining us. Would you kindly introduce yourself?
Sure, I'll jump in. Hi, my name is Kim Dadou-Brown, and I am a formerly incarcerated survivor advocate.
I'm Jacqueline Franchetti. I am Kira's mom, and I'm an advocate for children going through our family court system.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Geena. and I'm the president of SAFER, Survivors Advocating for Effective Reform, the CEO of Cruz Advocacy and Consulting, and a stabbing and domestic violence survivor.
Thank you all. So we know it's imperative that the voices of survivors and folks who have experienced domestic violence be centered in policy work to better meet the needs of all survivors. What role do survivors play in the policy field?
I think survivors play a big role in policy work. We know what we need. We know what needs need to be met and what needs to be done to meet those needs. We have the inside information from firsthand experience, and you can't beat that. And if our voices are heard, then more things can be done. It's less people talking about issues and more people solving, more action, more hands-on, I think, because we approach this with a different perspective.
I agree with Kim. And, real change happens when you have what I call an ecosystem merger, which is survivors, incredible domestic violence organizations like Niskative, and legislators working hand in hand. This is how we create real change, impactful change, better policy that is going to get directly at the root cause of what we're trying to do. I've been working with Niskative on Cleare's law, as well as a series of other bills to better protect children in family court, to protect them from abusive parents. And this merger that we've had going through the legislature and working together on these bills has been incredible and has really yielded amazing results.
I just want to add to that it's immensely valuable to have survivors' voices because we speak truth to power. And we not only speak it to our survivors and victims of domestic violence, we also do it to community organizations, political members, churches. We influence victim rights, funding, emergency crisis and intervention, intervention and prevention, policy changes in the workplace, and so on. There's so many things that the voices of survivor reaches in so many places.
I absolutely love that we're talking about the importance of including so many different folks in this conversation, because we know that it takes an enormous effort to kind of really get these policies passed that truly impact survivors. And Kim, like you said, it's extremely important that there's that personalization, that there are faces that go along with legislation being creative, so that there is someone in mind when you're thinking about who is this policy impacting most, to ensure that not only it's helping folks, but also that, we're taking into consideration any type of unintended consequences that may come about beforehand, before we've passed something. So this is really delicate work. What made you want to get involved?
I could start. I got involved about 25 years ago, although I'm only 21. I'll never forget the first time I walked into Congresswoman Louise Slaughter's office to get more funding for domestic violence. And she immediately said to me, you need to work with us on this VAWA law, and we need you. And yes, let's work together. I had this fear in me that she was going to reject me because of all the stuff I've been through. But no, she really listened to us. She had an ear for us, and not just her, many other political leaders did too. I believe our barriers, there are barriers that prevent us from engaging. Sometimes the fear of being heard, the fear of talking to police. Many victims didn't want to talk to police. That's why we got to create a safe space like SAFER to help survivors to see that their voice can create change, and that's where I say we speak up, and we have the hashtag we speak up because of the system. We speak up to change. We speak up to tell our story. We talk about whatever is necessary, and we provide that space for them to be able to feel comfortable to be able to speak.
I can add, when I was arrested in 1991, for murdering my abusive boyfriend in self-defense, I knew something was very wrong. I knew something was wrong with the way the whole situation was being handled, from the arresting officers to the judges to the DA and the public defender I had, who just wanted me to plead out, and didn't want to listen, and no one was listening to me. And I kept saying in court, no one's listening to me. And that's why I never pleaded out. And I knew something had to give, something had to change. There was no way that this could be right. There was no way that what was happening to me could be right and just. And I never knew that 30 years later, here I am, having done, thank you, having done a 17-year sentence and been home since 2008, working my behind off, just trying to make change and, get that DVSJA across the finish line, which we did. And just make sure that we could do all we can to obliterate domestic violence.
I call myself an accidental advocate. I wasn't on that path until a little over 5 years ago, when my beautiful, fiercely independent daughter, who was only 2 years old at the time, was murdered by her father while we were going through a custody case in New York Family Court. And what happened to Cleare can happen to another child you know and love, where a court can give access to an abusive parent. And this is happening at staggering rates. So I knew that if I didn't speak up and if I didn't do something, that what happened to Cleare could happen to someone you know and love.
Yes.
And similar to what you're hearing from Kim, from Geena, we have to use our voices to tell our stories. And it's not just us telling our stories, it's partnering with wonderful organizations who help amplify our voices that really make sure we get heard.
I think that's a big key, is to partner up with other organizations and people to be able to bring more numbers, to the table and speak up. So thank you for saying that, because it's important that we do that and be able to take our mess and make it a message, or our pain, and bring it into purpose.
Exactly. And I remember when I first started walking the hallways in Albany, just after Cleare's murder, no one even knew that this was a problem or an issue. And the last time that I was up in Albany, my meeting calendar was so packed because people wanted to speak and hear more about this. And that's the true testament of when we do come together and what we can do when we amplify our voices.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I think that's so powerful. Thank you for sharing a little bit of background into what really got you involved in this work, because oftentimes it is really vulnerable work, and but necessary work, so it doesn't happen anymore, as everyone is saying. So as we mentioned before, this is really challenging work. What do you think prevents more survivors or folks who have experienced domestic violence from engaging in policy work? Jacqueline, you kind of talked about what it felt like the first time you were in Albany. So what are some of those things that kind of bar survivors from doing more policy work?
Yeah, Geena mentioned the word, it's fear. And it is, you're scared to come forward. You're scared to talk about your story. You're not sure if there's going to be ramifications. You're not sure if you're going to be believed. And that's scary. And especially, I'm in the press, I'm out forward talking about this. And that puts you into a situation where you are potentially criticized for what you say. And you know what? But at the end of the day, I know that by sharing Cleare's story, it's saving lives. It's preventing this from happening to another child, another mother, another father. And we need to make sure that that happens, and that change becomes a reality. And we're seeing that happen right now. We're seeing the change begin to come into fruition. And that is incredibly rewarding.
With a felony conviction, you face horrible judgment, and you get looked down upon. because, you know, you committed a crime, you know, you took a life, you went to prison, you're one of those people, and you get stigmatized. And as a survivor advocate, speaking for myself, I've had to seek out organizations that were actually welcoming, because believe it or not, there's a lot that aren't. You know, they're really not. They have their own agenda, and I don't fit into that. And you have to see what's needed in your area, and you have to put yourself out there. And I know for myself, by sharing my pain and by sharing my trauma, I heal and I grow. And in doing that, I also am able to help someone else maybe learn to share so they can also heal and grow, because you have to live, right? We're still here. We have to live. And if you don't come to a certain sense of peace within yourself and everything around you, and the only way I find that peace is by sharing, healing, and growing. If you can find a space to do that, then you're succeeding already as an advocate, a survivor advocate.
I totally agree. I think that it's, again, our voices speaking up and being able to tell our stories to not just survivors, but to everyone. I don't care what kind of club you're in and what kind of organization you're in, being able to share those stories in every aspect that we're able to, so that somebody around you knows that if they're dealing with it, there's help out there. You know, that there's a safe space where they can speak. You know, those are very huge things, and healing is the key. When we speak and talk about our stories, we bring healing not only to ourselves but to those around us as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to piggyback on something you just said, Geena. You know, at the first legislative meeting I did, I cried throughout the entire thing. I
That's
mean,
okay.
they were handing me tissues, and I don't want anyone to hear this and think, oh my God, I wouldn't be able to get through it. I can't speak. I did eventually, but don't let that hold you back.
Don't give up.
Exactly.
Don't give up. Don't ever get up. Give up. Whatever your cause, whatever your passion, whatever your drive, don't give up.
Yeah.
I like that as a takeaway. Don't give up. We really see this idea of, you know, we talk about shifting the landscape, shifting, you know, the environments that we're working in, and ultimately to be more survivor informed and survivor engaged. And a big part of that are the things that you're mentioning right here: healing, sharing stories, you know, having that feeling of being a part of a community, taking what you've experienced and hoping that in the future there's something that will prevent it from happening, and that you're going to be an active part in ensuring that there are more protections for folks, accessible and equitable resources for folks. We kind of touched on this a little bit already, but do you have any advice for survivors who want to actively engage in policy work? Where do they start? What if, you know, there are some concerns around, I don't have the right prerequisites, I don't have, you know, the skill set, or I don't have a degree in this? Where do folks really kind of start?
I didn't have a degree when I started speaking. So you don't need a degree, you need your voice. You need to be able to know that there's a space there, a safe space there for you to be able to speak, not just speak to victims and survivors, but to judges, counselors, lawyers, advocates everywhere that are trying to hear your story. You know, the first part is being able to tell your story to be able to heal, and going to some place like Safer and being able to come together with men, women, and the LGBT community to be able to say, okay, what is going on in our community? What is lacking? What did you experience that we need to work on together to speak up? And being able to have that space for them, but also know that it takes time to heal. So a lot of times just being okay with not saying nothing sometimes. When someone joins you, it's okay for them not to speak. Give them their time, give them some time to be able to say, okay, I can speak today about my story. Okay, let them sit back and listen to whatever is going on until they're ready.
Okay, I'll jump in there. You know, I think that looking into what you find comfortable to do, if it's going, if as far as domestic violence, if it's going to a meeting at the local battered women's shelter, yeah, you don't have to say anything, just go. You know, the empowerment is in movement and just going. You don't have to share, you don't have to do anything you're not ready to do, but be ready to challenge yourself to do better and to grow. Growing is hard. It's hard for a little seed to break through the dirt to find the sunshine, but it doesn't, right? And the proof is all around us with spring and everything blooming, right? Everything's coming. It's hard to grow, but growing is essential. And find that path, find that path, find that safe space, as we were saying, find that safe space where you can get it out and be the person that you are. And don't lose yourself. Don't lose yourself in your anger or in your pain or in your grief. Don't lose yourself. Hang on to who you are and grow. And just find the space around you to do it. It's there. It's scary. It's scary, but it's there. Don't give up.
And I agree with both Kim and Geena here. You know, the big thing is you belong, and looking at what your strengths are in terms of what you can bring to the table. Everyone has strengths. And some people, you know, I know I communicate well. So for me, communicating the press was a great way for me to get my message across. But that's not for everyone.
Right.
You know, you can be an incredible writer. You can be an incredible person at gathering people together. There are so many ways in which you can be involved. So really look at what makes you happy, what makes you feel powerful, what makes you feel like you're healing through this too, and embrace that and figure out that's the way that you can move forward with this.
Thank you for saying that, Jackie, because, you know, a lot of times we want people to do things and we need to find out what their talents are and what they can deal with. So I'm glad you said that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that you all are hitting on too is this idea of support network, of ensuring that you have folks that you can reach out to, you know, who are going to support you 100% no matter what, regardless of what you're comfortable with. And there's always going to be a space for you in policy work. There's always going to be, in the sense you do belong there. But for those days when you have those questions or start questioning things, you have that really powerful support network who's there to catch you.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, and when you work on policy, it is the wackiest thing that ever happens. Some bills will pass, and you're getting the reaction already. Some bills pass like this, and some are like, "What in the world? Why isn't this moving?" It's, you know, it's almost like each bill has its own personality, its own person, somewhat, and you just have to be. If you can walk in with an open mind and open heart, and what I embrace is, I don't look at the end of the tunnel. I look at the journey, and if you enjoy the journey, this is going to be an amazing ride.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful.
I know that is speaking for how important the voices of the survivor advocate, the DVSJA would never have made it across the finish line. And the people we have gotten out of prison under this new law would not be home right now if it were not for the voice of all of us survivor advocates who literally laid our trauma at the feet of these legislators and just testified repeatedly for 10 years. It was our voices that would not stop, that made them eventually see the light in what we were doing. And so I just want to say how powerful we can move mountains. We can get things done.
Yes, and then they know you. So they know you can move mountains. So they count on you, and call on you. With SAFER, we've been involved in getting fair access law done, getting paid leave for the city of Rochester employees, for their families and victims there. We also help with the address confidential law. So it's like they know you, so they're coming to you and saying, oh my God, can you help us advocate and amplify this, you know? Or if we're creating it, it's like what Jackie said, we have to be patient. It's not gonna go go through the first time it's presented.
It might.
It might. We cross our fingers. There's some that have, but there are plenty of times that there haven't been. We need to correct this. We need to correct that. Change this or change that. And there's only at certain times that they do these, you know, throughout the year or so. Just have patience.
Have patience, and you know what your Kim and Gina are also starting to talk about is, you know, I just introduced a bill a few weeks ago. And members of the media and senators and assembly members called me and said, what do you think about the bill? And I'm like, it's great. I worked on drafting it. You know, you become that voice to them. Hey, you know, we want to have your opinion on this too. And that's where you can get, and that's when you know you've really made some incredible traction.
Absolutely. So similarly, you know, to end our panel here, what advice would you have to the advocates, community members, folks who are here right now, who are getting ready to go chat with their elected officials?
I would say to them, listen to what the community needs. Okay, listen to the voices of domestic violence survivors and victims. I will never forget that about 10 years ago, Catherine Cerulli had a vision to end domestic violence victim having to tell their story over and over and over again, you know, whether you're telling it to a counselor, to a police officer, a judge, an agency. It's like you're telling your story over and over and over again. When she wanted to create a one-stop shop. And it was the first of its kind to be able to bring order of protection in the nation, the first in the nation to do an order of protection via Skype. And HEAL is in the 5th year of it being around because of her listening to people like me and other survivors in our community. She wanted to, you know, hear the voices of us and know what it is that helps to create change. But there's fear. You just got to continually see what is going on in your community with survivors. What are the needs? And not just with them. Look at what's going on with the judges, the police, the counselors, and everything in the community.
Yes, and if there needs to be change, don't be afraid to speak up about it. You know, policies are made to change and be updated. There are amendments all the time. Don't be afraid to speak up and change, because people get into this same rut. They default back to the same answer and the same. I'm seeing that right here in Rochester with the violence. You know, everybody talks a good game, but nobody's out on the street trying to do anything. And that's just a small example, but I'm saying be about it. Don't talk about it. And I think maybe they don't know how to be about it. And guess what? That's what we're for, because we've walked the walk, so we can talk the talk with you. So don't be afraid to talk with us and to join hands with us and to move forward together. That's what I think a big takeaway is. You know, if you don't know exactly what to do to become active, to make change, because you're supposed to care, right? So if you don't know what to do, ask us. We'll help you. We'll help you be active, be about it.
And speak up.
That's right.
And what you're hearing from Kim and Gina is anything is possible here. And it's all up to you of what you want to do. If you are going to be tenacious, if you are going to keep going for this, doors will open. You know, you might have to knock on doors 15 times before they do. And sometimes that door might not open for years, but it will. And, you know, one of the big things for me when I first started doing this was I had to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and doing things that are outside my comfort zone. You know, I'm not somebody, and I don't think many people sit here and say, hey, I want to cold call people. You know what? Do you know how I got to go no Niskative? I made a cold call. And this is how I got involved with Niskative. And it's one of the best cold calls I made. You know, you have to do things that are outside your comfort zone. And, you know, nothing obviously that's bad, but things that are not maybe intrinsic to you, and you'll have to do that. But the results can be incredible. And working with Niskative has been a game changer in terms of bringing forward legislation, and that's led to so much movement in the family court space and protecting children. And I'm forever thankful for it.
And just the one final thing that I would like to add to advocates is to know your resources. You know the resources that are available in the community, in the state, and nationally. You never know what phone call you're going to get. Okay, so being able to have those resources and knowing those resources, it truly helps when you get that call to help someone.
Yeah.
Yep. Can I just add just one more thing? As far as most people, who haven't experienced domestic violence or trauma, I'm so happy for you that you haven't had to experience this. But if you have, you may not understand where people are coming from. You think you do, but you can't learn that in a book, and you can't learn that at a lecture or at a seminar. And if you haven't been incarcerated and you don't know what DV is, and you don't know what it's like to be afraid of the person you sleep next to, then maybe you don't know the triggers that you are invoking with the person that you are speaking with. So just having a trauma-informed approach and allowing the survivor advocate to give you that insight to someone because we've been there.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And you'll find so many people have shockingly similar stories.
Mm-hmm.
I was just yesterday at a lunch and I was talking about what happened in my daughter Kira's case. And 3 people at the table of 10 shared similar stories of how they were scared and terrified for their own child. And this wasn't something, I wasn't in a group that was advocates. This was just women who were at a table. And, it's amazing what happens when you share your story, how it opens up others.
Absolutely. So Kim, Jacqueline, Geena, thank you so much for being a part of this panel today. This is just the beginning of this work, so be sure you're going to see these faces again. I thank everyone for joining us today for Niskative's Legislative Day of Action. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Niskative, and good luck, everybody.
Thank you, Niskative. Thank you.
Thank you, Queens.
Wow, what a wonderful panel. Thank you, Brittany, for your work facilitating the discussion, and to our panelists, Geena, Kim, and Jacqueline. We hope to sponsor another event in the near future to delve even deeper into the work of survivor advocates and their collaborations with domestic violence service providers. So please stay tuned for that. Our next speaker, who's been waiting, I'm sorry, we're running a little late, needs no introduction to this community. She's a tireless advocate for children and families and for domestic violence survivors in particular. She's the longest serving woman in the history of the Assembly, and she's of course Assemblymember Helene Weinstein. Her work in support of New York's domestic violence survivors goes back more than 25 years. I'm really dating you now. When she sponsored New York State's landmark Family Protection and Domestic Violence Intervention Act. This law significantly changed the way police and courts dealt with domestic violence. More recently, last year, Assemblymember Weinstein's bill to ensure domestic violence advocates' conversations with clients are not subject to subpoena was signed into law. That was one of our top priorities. And this year we're prioritizing another one of her bills to ensure litigants in family court receive copies of their forensic child custody evaluations, as well as the evaluator's supporting file. She's kind enough to serve as our legislative sponsor for our annual Day of Action today. And she is the first female chair of the Assembly Ways and Means Committee, overseeing all matters pertaining to the state budget and all legislation introduced in the Assembly that would impact spending or revenues at the state or local levels. So Assemblymember Weinstein, thank you so much for being here today.
It's a
pleasure, Joan, to be here and to be here with all of the advocates. I know we all would prefer, after several years of being virtual, it had been hoped that we'd be together in the Capitol, but this is such a critical day for the participants who are here and for my colleagues. It is really, I was listening to the panel before, and it's really so important that there is this interaction with my colleagues, because you're really playing a very critical role in the process of moving legislation. Your advocacy, leadership on domestic violence issues is really critical to make sure that the voices of survivors and the domestic violence programs are being heard, because there's nothing like, we can read on paper about the impact of domestic violence on a family, on individuals, on children, but unless when you hear it from someone who's experienced it, it takes on a whole different dimension. And we do have a number of the past handful of years, we've had a number of new colleagues join us in the Assembly who aren't as familiar with the history of the legislation that we've worked on, and the issues that we've worked on, the funding issues that we've worked on. Joan mentioned I've been here for that I'm the longest serving woman. When I came here, I had short, dark hair. This is now my pandemic cut. And while the pandemic may have made my hair grow a little longer, and it stayed gray, it's real. The pandemic has had tremendous negative impact on families. It's been very hard for people struggling, and we all know that the incidences of domestic violence have increased. So there's even more pressure that we do more to assist families and women and children who are victims of domestic violence. So it's important for my colleagues, when you meet with people later today, to hear some of what's happened over these past couple of years, and talk about some of the importance of having passing some of the legislation. Particular bill that I've been sponsoring for quite a few years now. It would provide for due process in court-ordered custody evaluations, and it's really critical that the individual, that the victim of domestic violence gets to see a copy of call it a forensic evaluation. It's the child custody evaluation. And too often the evaluators aren't familiar with the issues of domestic violence, they don't understand the psychological harm that can happen to a child, the subtle ways that there can be pressure put on the mother, and it's important that the victim of domestic violence and their attorneys get to see these evaluations, because often they have a lot of hearsay in it. That's just comments without any fact, made up information, and it's really critical in determining the custody of children that the victims of domestic violence have the ability to see these reports, their counsel see these reports, that they can defend against what's often erroneous material in it. So it's a bill that we've passed a couple of times in the Assembly. We haven't gotten the Senate to move forward with it yet. Senator Biaggi is sponsoring it in the Senate. I'm very pleased to see that. The governor's task force did recommend that the forensic custody evaluations be available to all sides. What we're concerned about, obviously, is that the woman, her lawyer, gets to see what this information is. So I'm more hopeful this year than I have been in prior years. As people who have been longtime advocates and have been here, you know that sometimes we celebrate a bill after it passes for 20 years, and sometimes we celebrate the passage of a bill that helps victims when it happens in just a year, the year. So I'm optimistic that this could be the year that we pass this due process measure. We just, in the budget, we did enact some funding for non-residential services. More, that's something that I know is very important to the programs. And we have continued to provide some domestic violence legal services funding that helps also assist a lot of the programs around the state. But really what's most important is for the people who are meeting with legislators later, just tell your story, just tell your personal story, to talk about how the programs, the initiative has helped you, talk about how the programs have helped you, and just be a face of domestic violence for people who maybe haven't, for my colleagues who haven't been involved in the issue. It's really so critical that you're here. And next year, I'm looking forward to us all being in the well of the legislative office building. I didn't wear purple today. I didn't plan to get dressed correctly, I have to admit. But it's always a wonderful day when the advocates are here and can walk around and meet face to face with legislators. We're all used to Zoom, so it's almost the same, and perhaps you get to see people you might not be able to see if you were physically here. So again, I really appreciate the work that the programs do, that the advocates do, that NISCDF does, and just always a pleasure to be here and join with you. And good luck on your journeys today to meet with my colleagues.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Weinstein. We couldn't have a better champion, and you're so modest. You know, the effort that you do, particularly on the budget for domestic violence services and victim services generally, is really terrific. And frankly, we couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much for that work. I'd now like to introduce everyone to a relatively new member in the legislature. Senator Cordell Cleare was elected to fill the Senate seat vacated by Brian Benjamin, who stepped down to become New York's lieutenant governor. She won that special election with almost 90% of the vote, 90%, and is one of only 2 women to hold the seat. That's because Senator Cleare was no stranger to the community or that district. Previously, she had served as board president of Community School District 3 on the Upper West Side in Central Harlem, and then as the president of the Community Education Council in the district. Then for nearly 2 decades, she served as chief of staff to Bill Perkins during his time in the New York City Council and New York State Senate. Now in the Senate, she serves as chair of the Senate Women's Issues Committee, and in that role is sponsoring a resolution today to proclaim April 26th as Domestic Violence Awareness and Prevention Day. She prioritizes legislation that she hopes will stop the fear and hopelessness of the future, focusing on issues like the quality and safety in housing, programs that can prevent criminal behavior, and ensuring fair access to New York's resources. She's dedicated to preserving families by focusing on workforce development, job creation, ending gun violence in our streets, and domestic violence. Senator Cleare, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that great introduction.
I just want to thank the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence for your courageous, pioneering, and incredible work over the past 40 years. Much thanks to my colleague, Assemblymember Weinstein, for all of her hard work. As a relatively new senator and chair of the Senate Standing Committee on Women's Issues, I appreciate the coalition for your outreach, partnership, and record as a thoughtful and persistent force for change. I'm honored to be a co-sponsor of your entire 6-bill package, legislative day of action agenda, including Senator Myrie's Fair Access to Compensation bill, which I believe is long overdue and most necessary. I will do everything in my power to ensure that each of these bills is acted upon this year because the causes of justice and equity can't wait another moment. Like so many other issues, domestic violence has a disproportionate impact on communities of color, and in particular, Black women, over 40% of whom will experience a domestic violence episode in their lifetime at a rate of 2.5 to 3 times more than others. This is an alarming and painful fact, yet I know that it drives all of us here today to redouble and enhance our efforts. I'm also grateful for the myriad number of grassroots groups that are in the streets, homes, courts, and police stations, each and every day helping to guide and empower survivors. In particular, I have a group in my district called WARM, who I know is out there saving lives. In my leadership of the Women's Issues Committee, I prioritize focus on a particular form of domestic violence called human trafficking. The correlations and interrelationships between the two are undeniable, and I have made it my mission to ensure that New York State is eradicated of human trafficking. I have, friends, neighbors, and direct experiences. I have seen through those experiences, I have seen what it does to human beings, and the human trafficking cases that I've witnessed are very heartbreaking. So I believe we have to unify people, a state, and progressive force, not only to raise awareness and not only to build healthy support systems, but to wipe this practice out of society. I've drafted and introduced a 13-bill package after many conversations with family members, survivors, advocates, and the Manhattan DA's office. These bills focus on information, empowerment, proactive solutions, such as an interceptor program, a universal hotline, and dedicated shelters and supports, as well as arming prosecutors with responsible tools to seek justice for survivors. You can look up my bills. I hope that y'all join me in support. And while this is a particular focus based on several experiences that I've seen in my district, there are some things that are universal. And we know that domestic violence and other forms of violence are often successful because of the hold that people have over other individuals and the services that are lacking and resources that are lacking. And sometimes people have to worry about a place to live, worry about an income, worry about where they have to go. So part of my overall mission is to fight for these services so that no one should ever have to choose living healthy and peacefully or safely over having shelter. We have to provide housing. And it has to be affordable and available to all the citizens of our city, and particularly those who are most vulnerable. So I am your ally. Please count me as that. I am thankful for the women who shared their stories. So sadly, I know so many stories and so many women and so many people close to me that have suffered, but we must continue, and I'm sorry, I don't have the name of the speaker, but your voices have to continue. Our voices have to stay on this issue. Keep bringing it to the forefront. Another speaker talked about, even when it's uncomfortable, we have to continue to speak on it and bring it up. So I hope that everyone at the New York Coalition Against Domestic Violence and all those who are part of this legislative day of action
will stay strong and know that you have a partnership with me. And I look forward to our advocacy and work together in the future. Thank you so much for inviting me. And it's an honor to be a part of what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Senator, and thank you for sponsoring that resolution in the Senate chamber today. We'll be listening in, so we really do appreciate that, and we look forward to working with you much more closely on the issues that are near and dear to your heart that can improve domestic violence survivors' experiences and those of their families. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who has been widely recognized as a trailblazer in local and state government and a champion for progressive action. In 2012, she became the first woman, an African-American woman, to lead a New York State legislative conference. In 2019, she shattered the glass ceiling when her peers elected her as temporary president and majority leader of the state Senate. And in just her first year as Senate Majority Leader in 2019, Andrea Stewart-Cousins led the most productive legislative session in state history. She has overseen the passage of historic and transformative legislation on issues including gun safety, women's rights, immigration, LGBTQ issues, the justice system, the list goes on and on. And under her leadership, the Senate passed the strongest tenant protections and affordable housing package in state history. The Majority Leader provided us with a pre-recorded message, which we will play for you now.
Hello, I'm New York State Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins. I'm pleased to join you virtually for this year's New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence Legislative Action Day. I want to thank all of the advocates for your continued work to support survivors and families who've experienced domestic violence. Domestic violence has no place here in New York State or anywhere. We in state government have a responsibility to address this unacceptable scourge and provide assistance and support to those impacted by this horrible crime. The New York State Senate Democratic majority understands the importance of providing legal services and advocacy to survivors of domestic violence. This is why, as Majority Leader, I've made it a top priority to pass bills that will help prevent domestic violence, strengthen protections for victims, and provide more resources for survivors. I'm proud of the work we've done to protect voter record confidentiality that allows survivors to keep their voter records private for their safety and enables them to break contracts with utility, phone, and television companies without penalty when fleeing instances of domestic violence. Last session, we also passed legislation that will allow prosecutors to have access to pass orders of protection in domestic violence cases so that they can charge abusers with criminal contempt if they violated a past order of protection. We're proud to inform you also that we will join you in observing April 26th as Domestic Violence Awareness Day by passing a robust package of legislation that supports victims of domestic violence and abuse. Moving forward, during the remainder of the session, the Senate is proud to lead on the Adult Survivors Act and look forward to passing this critical bill again in 2022. We will also once again pass legislation to protect victims of domestic violence by requiring criminal or family court judges to inquire as to the defendant's or respondent's possession of a firearm when orders of protection are issued. Additional legislation will include expanded protections for victims of domestic violence by adding status as a victim or survivor of domestic violence as a protected class in the remaining jurisdictional areas, including public accommodations, private and publicly assisted housing, education, and credit. This will include law that requires statewide housing authorities in reviewing applicants to grant domestic violence survivors the same preference as granted other prioritized populations. Victims too often remain in the shadows, and it is because of your work that they're given a safe haven and receive the help they need to end the cycle of abuse and seek justice. During the pandemic, many victims already living in volatile households were forced to stay in a home with their abusers. This is why your organization is so vital. Domestic violence service providers, though, have also experienced short staffing issues due to the pandemic and need higher pay in order to increase staffing and quality of services. That's why I'm proud the Senate majority advocated for increasing funding to address domestic violence in this year's budget. This includes an additional $200,000 for non-residential domestic violence services and an additional $150,000 for the Sexual Harassment and Gender-Based Violence Awareness Program. Likewise, the Senate majority was part of the advocacy efforts that successfully urged the governor to provide $14 million to offset missing federal funds for domestic violence support services, which were provided as part of the 30-day amendments. Additionally, I want to take a moment to acknowledge our federal partners and President Biden for the signage of the Violence Against Women Act Reauthorization Act of 2022, providing crucial funding and grants, as well as strengthening the services and support for survivors from underserved and marginalized communities. Progress such as this would not be possible without advocates like yourselves in our local communities. Your work is crucial to New Yorkers, and I wish you the best during this year's Legislative Day of Action, so you may continue to highlight the areas where we can pass legislation that will do the most good. Thank you for your work. You do all you can to assist survivors in their pursuit of justice, and of course, you empower survivors so that they know that they are not alone. Thank you.
Thank you to the majority leader for providing us with that pre-recorded message. Today is a very busy day in Albany, so she wasn't able to be here live. But I'd like to thank her as well as all of our speakers for participating today. I know we're at time, so we are going to cut a little bit short. But I do want to encourage all the advocates today to tune in to the Senate and Assembly legislative sessions to hear passage of our Domestic Violence Awareness and Prevention Day resolutions. Both sessions begin at 3 o'clock. And we also, as noted earlier, one of our priority bills will be voted on in the Senate chamber today, which is that Adult Survivors Act. So that's very exciting. There'll be many legislative meetings held throughout the day. Let Niskative know if we can provide any support to you. And lastly, I want to give a big shout out of thanks to all of the domestic violence advocates, survivors, allies, community stakeholders, and legislative staff who have joined us this morning, and those who are participating in meetings throughout the day. I know we didn't get to describe 3 of our legislative priority bills this morning, but information about those bills and other support materials are available for you to download on our website at www.niskative.org. And next year, we hope to see you all back in the well of the Legislative Office Building, proudly wearing your purple. I know I'll be there. Thank you very much.